This is one of my favourite soups, tomato and basil soup made in a soup maker. I've made it in a Ninja, but it can be made in any soup maker. I've made it many times in a Morphy Richards model. This time I air fried the tomatoes, but they can also be added raw. I've also added onion, garlic, potato, carrot and some fresh basil. Carry on watching to see how to make it and when to add the basil. Start by peeling the onion and cutting it into quarters. You can use the chop function on the Ninja to cut both the onion and the garlic up small. You could also use pre-chopped frozen onion and garlic, which is really handy to have in the freezer. I quite often use that these days just as a way of speeding up the process of making the soups. So peel each of the garlic cloves and then add all of them directly to the soup maker. So put the lid on and secure it into place, and then switch it on and choose the chop function, and that cycle will run for just 12 seconds. All of the ingredients for this recipe are listed down below in the description, or you can find them over on my blog at Liana's Kitchen. The link to this is also down below. Once the cycle has finished, twist and remove the lid, and you can see how small the onion and garlic have been chopped up. Next, it's time to prepare the remaining ingredients. I don't usually bother peeling the potato. I just give it a wash and then chop it up into small chunks. The potato's here to thicken up the soup a little bit, so you can leave it out if you prefer a thinner soup, or you could add more tomatoes or less stock. I also don't peel the carrots before adding them. They too just get washed and chopped, and then I add them straight in. So next, add the tomatoes. As I mentioned at the beginning, these have been air fried. I coated them in some olive oil and dried mixed herbs, and then I cooked them at 200 degrees Celsius for around 10 minutes. I've also linked to that recipe in the description down below, but also, as I mentioned, tomatoes can just be added in raw. I just quite like the flavour once they've been air fried or roasted. I also usually add a vegetable stock pot or some powder straight to the soup maker jug, but for some reason I completely forgot to when recording this video. Luckily I realised quite quickly after setting it off, so I quickly added it through the top. I tend to use hot water straight from the kettle, but I know some people prefer to just add cold water, or they make the stock up separately before adding it. Any of these methods will work. So once everything is in, put the lid back on the jug and twist it into place. Switch the soup maker on and choose the smooth soup function. The programme will run for 30 minutes, and at the end we will add in the fresh basil leaves. But before we get to that, let me show you another place to get more soup maker recipes. So this is my blog Liana's Kitchen, which is where I upload all of my recipes. There are almost 100 soup maker recipes on there, as well as recipes for other appliances like air fryers, pressure cookers, bread makers. I am quite a fan of kitchen gadgets, as you may already know. Each recipe can be printed out, or you can just follow the recipe straight from the screen. If you don't want to print out the recipes yourself, I do also have a few soup maker recipe books. This one is available on Amazon and has most of my soup recipes in there. I've also linked to it in the description down below. There is a digital version available to buy directly from my blog. But let's get back to the recipe. During the 30-minute smooth soup cycle, you will see the ingredients simmering and bubbling away, with the occasional blending burst. Don't worry if you see some steam coming out of the top, that is completely normal. Right at the end, the soup maker will do one final fast blend to make sure the ingredients are turned into a lovely smooth soup. Once the cycle has finished and beeped to let you know, carefully remove the lid. It's probably best to use oven gloves or a kitchen towel to protect your hands from the hot steam that escapes out. So now it's time to add in the fresh basil leaves. I've added around 8, you can of course add more if you prefer. Once they're in, place the lid back on and choose the blend function. And then I use the low setting and I let it run for about 10 seconds. This is usually enough to chop the basil leaves up and mix them into the soup. So remove the lid again and check the basil leaves have been chopped up small enough and mixed in with the rest of the soup. All that is left to do now is pour the soup out and add any seasoning and soup toppings. I hope you've enjoyed watching me make this tomato and basil soup recipe. Please do let me know by liking this video and leaving me a comment down below. And if you're not already a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.